Okay, I'm going to walk you through on how I like to apply a balayage. So here I'm just making sure that I'm mixing all of my lightener up nice and creamy like. It's about a 1-to-1 ratio to make sure that it doesn't get any bleeds. So I take a slightly angled diagonal back section and then I create a V section. Here I'm just mostly wanting to show you how the elevation of how I'm holding the hair. And you can see too, I'm placing the hair in between my fingers, so I'm not pressing super hard on the hair. I mostly just wanted to show the elevation and how I am applying the lightener just on the surface, and then once I get done with applying how I like the top to look, I'm applying fully saturating on just the ends. She's wanting a super dimensional look with just lining up mostly her ends, since she previously had just a toner over her hair, and so it has faded out over time. We haven't lightened her in probably almost like a year and a half. The last time we just did like an all over gloss with like a level 7 all over, so it's faded out quite a bit. Here again, so I'm doing V placements, again looking at how my elevation is. I also keep my brush pretty flat on the surface of the applicating, and as well too with the applying on her ends, I keep it nice and elevated with that as well. Always staying super clean with my sectioning and keeping my hands nice and clean in between each section, wiping my hands off so I'm not getting lightener all over. And then I'm making sure that around her hairline too, that I don't want to apply too much lightener, so I take out that V section underneath as well. Here you can see my hands too, my right hand, how I'm holding the hair and then flicking it back underneath. That makes it to where I don't have to press super hard on the hair. That's a better example of me showing how to hold it. And then keeping the brush nice and flat with it on the head, and not pointing it up and down too much. Keeping the brush nice and flat. So I decided to do this balayage like this, mostly because she just wanted some dimension and moving up her previous highlights. We did a foil the time before and I did it like a foliage, but since she has previous blonde and she wanted to get it back lighter, I didn't want to put her hair through a foil or put her hair in a foil with lightener on it. Just for the integrity of her hair, balayaging lifts a lot lighter, more I guess softly and not as damaging as like a foil. So I chose to do a balayage just for that, and she has pretty naturally light hair, so it lifts really well. And then here I'm just doing a W. I like to pick up that section underneath to blur it back to make sure that there's not any spotting or anything like that. And then going through and I'm fully saturating the ends to make sure that she gets that lightness that she wants, but then keeping it nice and dimensional, and surface painting on the top on zone 1 and zone 2, and then zone 3 fully saturating her ends and flicking underneath to create softness. So you can see here too, I work my way up in a circular, my wrist is going in a circle and I'm walking my wrist up, or the brush up the hair, and then I flick back when I want to blur. So I saturate and walk my way up with the lightener, and then to blur I flick it back. So you can do, I'm doing like circle motions and then fully saturating. I like to apply the lightener underneath as well to make sure that I'm fully saturating the lightener all the way through so that there's not any spotting. And thicker lightener helps with that too. It reduces the bleeding for the lightener to fall through the hair and creating spots throughout your balayage. I also like to keep my brush nice and clean. You can see I take off the lightener and then get like a ribbon of lightener. That makes it to where I can saturate really easily too without using the entire brush to saturate. I just use the ribbon on the ends to saturate the hair. That way I can make little lines like how a foil would with the V's and the W. I get more control that way. So right here I'm just going up on her part. Balayaging is really nice for where you put it is where you're going to see it. So when a client has a specific part, it makes it super easy to make sure that you're parting it and applying the lightener on her part. If they move their part quite a bit, just making sure that you're applying lightener on all of the places that she would part. If she parts in the middle, making sure that you're applying in the middle, and then obviously if she parts off to the side, making sure that where her other part is, that you are also applying there, because you don't want a dark spot where her part is if she changes her part up at all. Okay, so here I just want to point out the elevation. So creating elevation or using elevation within balayaging helps create softness. It's really easy to accidentally get harsh lines in balayaging, and creating elevation within the balayage helps create softness. So always remembering that if you want more softness, you want more elevation. I'm also keeping in mind too, I'm following the pattern on the other side. So I'm trying to match, and I'm looking at the other side of her head and trying to match it as best as I can to the other side as well. So now I'm doing her bangs. She's growing out her straight across bangs. So I pulled some hair around her hairline so it's not so harsh when she puts her hair back. It kind of helps blur the line of demarcation. So here I'm doing 3 points of light. So I'm going to do the point from where it starts and then on both sides of the point. So there's another point, and then I'm doing another point on the surface so that when she has her hair down, she sees the lightness. But then also when she pulls her hair back, there's not a dark spot, and she'll still see light when it comes back. So I'm pretty much fully saturating that whole section, because underneath all that hair, underneath the same section, the hair that's not being lightened is creating that dimension, so it won't be super harsh. And then I'm just placing a cotton so that the hair underneath that didn't get saturated doesn't get saturated from the other sections. With balayaging, I like to start in the front just because it takes a little bit longer to lighten. I do like to start in the front to create the most time for the front to lighten, because naturally when you look at somebody that has like that natural sun-kissed hair, it's always lightest around the front and then slightly goes darker to the back. So it's kind of why I always do that with the balayaging. Depending on the porosity and the texture of the hair as well will depend on if I start in the front or the back. Usually with foiling, I start in the back so that if I have to start rinsing, it's a lot easier to rinse the back of their head when foils are done than in the front. But with balayaging, I want to get that sun-kissed look from where it goes light to dark naturally, and that is how you can achieve that with balayaging, is just by starting in the front and letting the front process for a little bit longer than the back. So now I'm doing the same sectioning. I did take it at an angle, or like a sectioning at like a V, to create dimension and softness. And now I'm going in a horizontal sectioning, and I'll just work my way up like that in the back. Naturally, again, with the sun-kissed look, there's more dimension underneath, so I don't have to focus so much on creating too much light on the top. It's mostly just lightening her ends, just because naturally the sun doesn't hit the inside of the hair right here that I'm working on, so I don't have to focus so much on the inside of the hair. It's mostly just on the ends and the top of her hair. So in this section here, unfortunately I didn't video it very well, so I'm just going to move on, but I just wanted to show how I applied it. I also took it in two separate sections because it was just still too wide on her head to take one big section. And now here I'm trying to decide if I want to do one section or two, so you'll kind of see me just kind of pick through, see how I like it. It was too small of a section to do two, but almost too big to do one. So I just did a deeper V and took out more dimension in between. And now I'm going to match what I did in the front to the back, so that wherever, when I stand over her, it all looks symmetrical and blended nicely together to where it all matches. So I just pretty much do W's on the top and then blur it backwards. So I saturate walking up and blur back. You'll notice too how much I'm going back into the bowl to constantly reapply or resaturate. That is because if you don't have enough lightener on your brush, you're just pulling lightener down and moving it around. You're not really saturating more lightener. So you always want to make sure that you have a good amount of lightener on your brush, but still keeping it nice and clean. So doing a little bit at a time and kind of layering on the lightener helps you saturate really well, but you don't ever want to go in with a lightener that doesn't, or a brush that doesn't have enough lightener on it, because it will just start pulling the lightener off. So we decided we wanted to diffuse her hair this day. So I like to brush through depending on the person's curls. With her curls, I can kind of pull them out and then scrunch them back in to kind of get control, because she can get kind of frizzy quickly. You can see here I'm pushing my hand through the hair underneath to make sure that I'm getting all of the hair. So I'm kind of like sandwiching them together into the brush, to kind of get more control over the hair. And then with her bangs here too, she says she usually uses that same brush to kind of curl them away to kind of get more control of her bangs. And then everywhere else I can just go in and just scrunch it back up. So here I've already applied some mousse, and some leave-in conditioner. I'm not touching her hair without products on my own hands as well, because if I touch the hair without any product in my hands, I am then creating friction, because the friction from my hands will create frizz on her hair. So making sure you always have some sort of like leave-in conditioner or mousse or any of the products that you're using on your hands, as well as you're styling curly hair, to reduce the frizz as well. When it comes to diffusing, I like to usually create like a surface dry, so that I can tame all of the little baby hairs and kind of blow dry them down into the hair before I start pushing up with the hair to reduce the frizz. So when I go through and decide it's ready to put the hair in the diffuser, I like to hold it for about a minute or so. I sped it up here just to kind of get it through faster, but I don't move the hair too much. I kind of just hold it and let it dry and let it be sculpted by the diffuser, and then I move on to the next side. So by having your client lean over to the side, it helps you get the hair off of their shoulder and creates lift so it's not so flat on their hair, and it helps you get more control of the hair. You can kind of see me here explaining what I'm doing and how I'm doing it to her, and just educating always as we go along throughout the service. As it's getting drier, you can kind of move it around a little bit more, because as it's getting drier, it's getting a lot hotter and closer to the scalp, so it's a lot easier to burn your clients. I like to go through and push my cool button as it's drying, just because I don't want to burn my client's scalp, because it's harder to feel how hot it's getting when it's on somebody else. It's a lot easier when you're doing it on yourself to feel that heat on your scalp. So here I'm still helping and teaching her how to do this at home herself to make it easier for when she does try to go home and style it. You can see the blonde pops coming out nicely and just the soft dimension on the top. She usually only comes in about once or twice a year, so making it super low maintenance for her is key. Thank you guys.